All right, so today we're going to be looking at phrasal verbs.
Yeah.
And we've got all kinds of sources here. We've got like grammar guides. We've got articles about the IELTS exam, even some like fun slang dictionaries.
Yeah.
And I guess our mission is to help people really understand and get a handle on these phrasal verbs.
Yeah, and the thing is, they can be kind of a headache for English learners.
For sure.
Because the meaning isn't always like obvious from the words themselves.
Yeah, and you kind of look at it and you think, I should know what that means.
Right.
But then you're like, wait, I don't.
Exactly.
So maybe we should start then with the most basic question.
Yeah.
What exactly are phrasal verbs?
So basically, a phrasal verb is a verb plus one or more particles.
Okay.
And those particles can be prepositions like, up, down, on, off, or adverbs like a way back out. Okay. And so when you put these words together, these simple words, they create a new meaning that's often like completely different from the original verb. Okay, I think I get that, but can you give me an example?
Sure. So let's think about the verb take.
Okay.
On its own, it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
But then when you add the particle off, you suddenly have all these possibilities.
Oh, yeah.
So take off can describe a plane leaving the ground.
Right.
It can mean removing clothing.
Oh, yeah.
Or it can even mean like the success of a business.
Wow. So just adding that one little word off to the word take completely changes.
Totally changes the meaning.
The meaning, yeah. And you're right. It is kind of a headache.
It can be.
It's like, wait, which takeoff are we talking about now?
Exactly. But, but they are so useful, I think.
Right.
They're very powerful.
Yeah.
And they let you express yourself in a way that sounds much more natural and fluent.
Okay. Yeah, so that's why they're important.
That's why they're important.
Because you sound more like a native speaker.
Yes, especially when you're speaking.
Yeah.
Or if you're taking an exam like the IELTS. Oh, yeah, speaking of the IELTS exam.
Yeah.
Why are phrasal verbs so important for that?
Well, the speaking test on the IELTS, it's all about showing how fluent you are and how much vocabulary you know.
Okay.
So if you can use phrasal verbs correctly, it makes you sound much more like a native speaker.
Right. So I guess it would impress the examiners.
Exactly.
Okay.
So for example, think about the difference between saying, I discovered the truth and I figured out the truth.
Yeah. Figured out definitely sounds.
It sounds more natural.
More natural. Yeah.
Right.
Like you're not even trying.
Exactly.
Okay. So I'm seeing why they're important.
Yeah.
But, one thing I've heard is that they're not always appropriate.
That's right.
Like in writing, for example.
Yeah, you have to be a bit careful.
Okay, so like maybe I should use them with my friends.
Right.
But not in a business report.
Exactly. It's all about the context.
Gotcha.
And the audience.
Right, you've got to know when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like, you wouldn't wear a tracksuit to a wedding.
True.
So you wouldn't use phrasal verbs in a formal essay.
Yeah, okay, I see what you mean. So context is key.
Context is key.
But I think our source material had some good examples of phrasal verbs.
Yes.
Like in everyday situations.
In everyday
like real life stuff, right?
Exactly.
So what do you think? What are some of those?
Well, one of the most common themes is travel.
Travel. Oh, yeah, for sure.
And that's something everyone can relate to.
Yeah.
So think about the phrasal verbs set off and break down.
Yeah.
So you could say, I wanted to set off early for my vacation, but my car broke down on the highway.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
I can relate to that one.
It happens to everyone.
That's the worst.
It is.
And that's a good example, too, because the same phrasal verb can have multiple meanings.
Absolutely.
Depending on the situation.
Yeah.
So break down could be the car breaking down.
Right.
Or it could be like a person having a breakdown.
Yeah, like an emotional breakdown. Or even like, breaking down a complex idea into simpler parts.
Oh, wow. So many different ways.
Yeah.
To use the same phrasal verb.
Exactly. So context is really important.
Okay, so context is everything.
It is.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What about other situations?
Well, relationships are another big one.
Oh, yeah, relationships.
So many phrasal verbs for a relationship.
Yeah, like what?
Like, get along, break up, fall for.
Oh, yeah, those are good ones.
Yeah, you could say like, we were getting along great, but then we had a big fight and broke up.
Ouch.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, it does happen.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, but it's true. Like I said before, those phrasal verbs can really pack in a lot of emotion.
They do.
Yeah.
Like a whole story in just 2 words.
Right.
Break up.
You know everything.
You know the whole story.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff.
It is.
Okay, cool. So we've looked at some different situations where these phrasal verbs pop up.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like they're everywhere.
They are everywhere.
Once you start to notice.
You can't unsee them once you know what they are.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So maybe the next part we can talk about how to actually learn these things.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Because they can be tough.
They can be tricky.
Yeah.
But they're worth it.
Yeah.
Definitely worth the effort.
All right, so join us next time.
Yeah, we'll have lots more tips and tricks for mastering phrasal verbs.
Yeah, so you can really level up your English.
Exactly.
I'll see you then.
See you later.
Okay, so I think we've established that phrasal verbs are like everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're really important if you want to, sound more natural.
Yeah, if you want to level up your English.
Exactly.
Okay.
Sure. But the question is, how do we actually learn these things?
Right, because they can be tricky.
They can be tough.
Yeah.
They can be.
But I think our source material actually had some good advice on
Sure.
tips for learning and remembering phrasal verbs. Right.
So what did you find there?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to focus on understanding the context.
Okay.
You wouldn't use take off in the same way.
Right.
If you were talking about a plane versus taking off a hat.
Yeah. Okay. So context is super important.
Context is everything.
Gotcha. What else did our source material say?
It also talked about the importance of practice.
Okay.
Especially for something like the IELTS speaking test.
Mm-hmm.
It can be really helpful to record yourself answering questions.
Yeah.
And trying to use those phrasal verbs naturally.
Okay, so just get in there and start using them.
Exactly. The more you use them, the more comfortable you'll become.
The more natural it'll sound.
Right.
Okay, cool. What else?
Another good tip was to make flashcards.
Oh, yeah, flashcards.
Yeah. You can write the phrasal verb on one side and then the meaning and an example sentence on the other side.
I love flashcards.
Yeah.
They're like a classic study tool.
Yeah, they really work.
Yeah, I used them all the time when I was learning new languages.
Me too. It's a good way to build up your vocabulary.
Yeah, it's simple, but it's effective.
It is.
Okay, so we've got practice, we've got flashcards.
Right.
Any other good tips from the source material?
Yeah. Another tip was to learn synonyms.
Synonyms.
Oh, okay. For the phrasal verbs that you're learning.
So different ways of saying the same thing.
Exactly. So, for example, for find out,
yeah,
you could also use discover or uncover.
Right. So it's good to have a range of options.
Different tools for different jobs.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is all making a lot more sense to me now.
Good.
I feel like I'm finally starting to crack the code.
Yeah.
Of phrasal verbs.
That's great to hear.
But I think it's important to remember that they're not just about, sounding more natural.
Right.
They can actually have subtle differences in meaning.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's where things can get a bit tricky.
That is where it gets tricky.
Because even phrasal verbs that seem similar can actually have quite different meanings.
Yeah, subtle shades of meaning.
Exactly.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. Let's think about look up and look for.
Okay.
They both kind of involve searching for something, but look up usually means finding information in a specific place, like a dictionary.
Right.
Whereas look for is more about searching in a general sense.
Ah, okay. So if I'm trying to remember a word, I would look it up in a dictionary.
Exactly.
But if I lost my keys,
yes,
I would look for them around the house.
Exactly. You got it.
Wow. So even those little words up and for can make a big difference.
They can make a big difference.
Okay. So paying attention to those little details is super important.
It's really important.
Gotcha. But before we move on,
I
think our source material also mentions something about separable and inseparable phrasal verbs.
Yeah.
What's the deal with that?
So, that's another important thing to know. Okay.
About phrasal verbs. So some phrasal verbs are separable.
Okay.
Which means you can put the object between the verb and the particle.
Okay.
So, for example, you can say, turn the lights off.
Right.
Or turn off the lights.
Okay, both are correct.
Both are correct.
Gotcha. So what about inseparable ones then?
So with inseparable phrasal verbs, the verb and the particle have to stay together. You can't put the object in between.
Okay, so you can't say look the word for...
Exactly. You have to say look for the word.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So how do we know which ones are separable and which ones are inseparable?
Well, unfortunately, there's no hard and fast rule.
Oh, okay.
It's one of those things you just have to learn.
Okay, so just lots of practice.
Lots of practice and exposure.
Gotcha.
But, dictionaries and grammar guides can help you figure out which is which.
Okay, so it's like learning a new dance move. You know, it might feel awkward at first.
Right.
But with practice, it becomes second nature.
Exactly. And the more you kind of immerse yourself in real English, like watching movies, listening to music, you'll start to get a feel for it.
Yeah, it'll become more natural.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So we've talked a lot about phrasal verbs in like everyday speech and informal writing. But what about more formal contexts?
Right.
Like our source material mentioned that there are some phrasal verbs that are actually considered quite formal.
Yes, that's right.
And are totally appropriate for like academic writing.
Yeah, or professional contexts.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Okay, so for example, one formal phrasal verb is carry out.
Okay.
Which means to perform or execute.
Right.
So you might see it in a sentence like, the researchers carried out a series of experiments.
Yeah, that sounds very official.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, like very scientific.
Yes, very academic.
Okay. What are some other examples?
Another good one is point out.
Okay.
Which means to highlight or draw attention to something. So you might say, the author pointed out several flaws in the study's methodology.
So it's like a more formal way of saying like show.
Exactly.
Or highlight.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And are there any others that come to mind?
Let's see. Oh, account for.
Okay.
Which means to explain or provide a reason. So you might say, the company's success can be accounted for by its innovative marketing strategy.
Wow, yeah, these formal phrasal verbs.
Yeah.
They really add like a level of sophistication
to
the language.
Yeah, they sound very professional.
Yeah, for sure. This is great. I'm learning so much.
Good, I'm glad.
I feel like we're really getting to the bottom of this whole phrasal verb thing.
I think so too.
It's like we're peeling back the layers of an onion.
Yeah.
And revealing all these hidden depths. It's like the English language.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
I'm loving this deep dive.
Me too.
Well, I feel like we've really gone deep. Like we've done a deep dive.
We have.
Into phrasal verbs.
A deep dive.
And wow, it's amazing how much depth there really is to them.
Yeah, it's like a whole world.
Right? Once you start exploring them.
It's like we've unlocked this secret code of English, like how native speakers really use it.
Absolutely.
But I'm curious,
Yeah.
Are there any phrasal verbs that you are particularly fond of?
Oh, let me think. Any that you use like all the time?
I'm a big fan of figure out.
Figure out.
I think that one's so useful.
Yeah.
It's like my go-to phrasal verb.
Yeah, it's a good one. It really is versatile.
It is. Yeah, it works in so many situations.
Right.
Like you can use it for problem solving, like trying to understand something.
Yeah.
Or even just like navigating daily life.
Right.
Figure out how to get to the store.
Yeah. Figure out how to fix that leaky faucet. Figure out how to, write that email.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a good one. What about you? Do you have any favorites?
What about you?
I think I really like look forward to.
Oh, look forward to. That's a good one.
I think I use that one a lot.
Yeah, it's got a nice positive feeling to it.
Yeah.
Like you're excited about something.
Exactly. And it's perfect for like talking about future plans.
Right.
Like, oh, I'm really looking forward to that trip. Or I'm looking forward to seeing you again.
It's a good one.
Yeah. And of course, there's the classic, get along with.
Oh, yeah. Get along with.
That one's essential.
For sure.
Especially when you're talking about relationships.
Right. Like social dynamics.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, I get along really well with my coworkers. Or I don't really get along with my neighbor.
Yeah. Those are good examples.
It can be positive or negative.
Yeah, it really depends on the context.
Exactly.
And that's the beauty of phrasal verbs.
It is.
They give you so much nuance.
Yeah.
And they let you express yourself in a really natural way.
Yeah, you can really get those subtle shades of meaning.
Absolutely.
And that's what makes language so interesting.
It is.
Well, this has been so insightful. I've learned a lot today.
Me too.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
My pleasure.
And for helping us, unlock the secrets of phrasal verbs.
Yeah, it's been fun.
And to all of our listeners out there.
Yeah.
Remember that, learning phrasal verbs is a journey.
It's a process.
Yeah. It's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
But don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah. Just keep practicing.
Keep practicing and have fun with it.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah. The more you enjoy it,
yeah,
the easier it will be.
Exactly.
So keep exploring, keep practicing.
Yeah, and keep those phrasal verbs rolling off your tongue.
That's it for today's deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. See you later.